My name's Jordan. I'm the IT manager here at the Other Side Academy, and it's quite the story how I found myself here. The beginning of my life was pretty normal. I grew up in a small town up north called Perry, and life was good. Had mom and dad there, had my older brother who I absolutely idolized. Played soccer, did scouts, all that fun stuff. And throughout my entire life, I just kind of followed what my brother did. And eventually he ended up going on a 2-year LDS mission, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And, I started looking around for some sort of fulfillment because I wasn't getting it from that older brother anymore. And I found some pretty negative friends, It was just running around, causing havoc, always up to no good, and it started out pretty innocent. It wasn't long before I'd been introduced to drugs, and it was rapid fire. The first thing was ecstasy and alcohol. 2 weeks later, it was cocaine. A month after that, it was heroin. And, at this point in time, I was just pretty much a street kid. I was bouncing around between my friends' couches. We were always finding a way to stay high or just stay up to mischief. And so we figured that selling drugs was a great idea. We could support our habit, we could keep living on couches, live on the cheap. And it's like I froze myself at that moment. I was 17 at the time when we had this brilliant idea. And my maturity stopped really at that point. And I spent the next few years doing that until eventually the law caught up to me. I got charges for the first time, and I was doing everything I could to shirk accountability in these moments. I really didn't understand the gravity of what I was doing. That really didn't come until later. But they finally nailed me down, and they're like, okay, you're doing probation. No matter what, you've got 4 sets of felonies now. If you don't complete probation, you're going to prison. And that put a little fear of God in me, but it didn't get me to the point where I thought that being honest was the right course of action. So the next 3 years I spent on probation, and I was getting high the entire time. I was just clever enough to dodge drug tests and to show up to work and to pay them money, and that's all they really wanted from me. And so, during that time period, the objective was to get me to live an honest, integrity-filled life, and, we missed the mark. Like, I missed the mark. I learned how to lie and deceive. As soon as I graduated and those restrictions were lifted, it was full force. I was straight back to it. I was back to the heroin and cocaine. And I was trying to hold some semblance of a normal life because I had some decent friends, but it couldn't maintain itself. You cannot work enough hours to support a heroin and cocaine habit. Eventually I started stealing from those friends, and at that point I had decided, I'm like, okay, I'm a terrible person because I love these people and I'm still doing it. So I'm going to surround myself with people that I don't love so I don't feel bad about what I'm doing. And so that was the better part of the next 6 years I spent with people that I didn't like, doing the worst sorts of things to support who I'd become, And that was plagued with, dishonesty, with theft, with, dispersing drugs to anyone. It really didn't matter who it was. I know some of the worst situations. Like, I knew that somebody was a single mother. I knew that the kids were pretty much taking care of themselves, and I still gave their mother drugs. And things were continually more dark, and, there was always a desire to do something different, but since I had, really paused my life at the age of 17, I had no idea how to even show up to work anymore. So I find myself at age 25 realizing that this is a terrible way to live. And so I'm like, okay, let's go to rehab. And, this is actually my third rather. And so I go through it, and I feel really good through these 90 days, and I have all the desire in the world, but when I got released, I didn't have the capability. I still couldn't wake up in the morning. I still couldn't feed myself for regular hours. I still couldn't show up in an honest way for anyone. Not my family, not my friends. It always felt easier to lie rather than just cop to what was actually going on with me. And so I think it was 6 months before I was back at it again. And during this time period, I held a job long enough to take advantage of companies, and so you really don't get enough stability to have a home. I never considered myself homeless until I look back now. because I was consistently looking for a place to live. I remember one night in particular, I was in St. George, and I was selling drugs. There was money. I didn't want to go to a hotel for whatever reason, and so we found ourselves in a storage unit. And I thought that was totally normal. I thought it was okay. It wasn't until, I'd really sobered up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been homeless for the past decade. I haven't had stable income. I haven't had a stable place to lay my head at night. I really never knew where I was going to sleep. So after going to rehab, failing at that one more time, I burned just about every bridge that I had. There was no family that was going to help me. There was no friends. I definitely didn't have insurance. And so I hear about the Other Side Academy, and the only thing that I was told about it was that it was long and that it was hard. I remember walking in and having this old man tell me exactly who I was in full color. And it wasn't pretty, He had my number. And nobody had ever done that to me before, Everybody else I'd kind of preyed on their desire to believe the best in people, and I had a lot of potential, and I used people that way. So, at the end of these 18 months, I realized that I hadn't done anything that I really hated. I started to like the guy that I was. And so I'm like, okay, well, we should probably make sure this sticks. So I'm like, okay, sign me up for another year. Let's do this. And I've stayed really busy during my entire time at the academy. I took on every responsibility I could because it was easier to deal with myself busy than it was not busy. And so they gave me some real responsibility. They're like, okay, here's our IT department. Do what you can with it. If you need anything, just let us know. And they kind of handed the keys to me. And I'm still a student, mind you. I'm not being paid. And it was amazing to feel trusted. So after the third year, I'm about to graduate, and then they offered me a full-time position here. And, I've never been so grateful in my life. I felt pretty comfortable in who I'd become and, my ability to face life. Like I'm going to show up every single day. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be a positive influence. Having the job here has been absolutely wonderful. I look at my life now and I see so much that I didn't have before. I have a relationship with my family. I've got decent friendships again. I've got some sort of idea of where I want my life to go, and it's not like it's this unobtainable dream. I'm doing things today that I know will inevitably land me in that spot a few years from now. Being surrounded by the people that I'm surrounded with here is just an absolute blessing. And so when I heard about the shift to the Other Side Village, I was pretty excited. I know that it's not going to be the solution to all homelessness. That's pretty erroneous, but I know that there's a definite deficit in our system when it comes to our homeless population. And, from what I've gained here, if we can inculcate some of the homeless with some of the ideas and principles that we have, I think that there's a pocket that we can really help. If this really catches on, maybe it's just going to open up doors to help those other pockets of homeless people,